Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm Jolene, your host. With the Legal Learning Center, I help pre-law students and law students with their legal journey. Today, we will hear from Alex. Alex is the first in a three-part series of interviews with non-traditional students. Alex took about 10 years off before returning to law school. Stay tuned to find out what he did to ensure that his reentry into school was successful. At the end, I'll give you my top takeaways. But first, a word from our sponsor. Financially Free Aspiring Attorneys is a course with over $300,000 in money-saving tips, starting in high school and extending through law school graduation. If you want to go to law school but don't want to pay for it, visit legallearningcenter.com/financially-free to find out how you can avoid law loans. All right, so today I am joined by Alex. Alex is a returning student to law school, and he's going to share his experience with us. Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in Orange County, grew up in Anaheim. I went to high school. Afterwards, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I was gravitating towards two things, the sciences and the law, right? I was in debate and stuff like that in high school. But as an immigrant, I didn't really think that that was something I could attain for some reason. I just didn't really have a very good understanding of all that stuff. And so I decided to go with what came easy, which was chemistry. And
Easy, huh?
exactly, I'd say that, understanding the statement, the implications. So I went to UCI for undergrad, really loved it, had a really good time. When I came out of it, I started working in the sciences in that type of field, ended up at the Orange County Sanitation District. And while I was there, with my career, I started reevaluating my life. I started mentoring at UCI. And through the mentorship program, I started asking questions of myself. What do I want to do? What is it? What are my passions? And so on. And so I decided at about 33, gosh, I want to go to law school. And it took me 3 years to get there. And I think those 3 years is kind of what you're kind of interested in, like, basically how.
Yeah, what was that 3 year there?
Yeah, so I understood that if you want to go to law school, you need some things. You need recommendations from professors, right? You need letters of recommendation, basically. You need to study for the LSAT. And I wanted to see, can I do it, right? Can I do it? One of the biggest things that I had was the mental block, right? This is something that is unattainable, something that I cannot do. And so I understood that I needed to keep working because I just bought a house. And I needed to keep working and I needed to go to a nighttime program. So there were only two schools that had that at the time, which was Whittier Law School and Western State. And so I said, okay, I looked at the program and I said, all right, you got to go to school Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. So that's 3 nights a week. So I enrolled at, I believe it was Orange Coast or Cypress College, one of those junior colleges. And I took introduction to philosophy, introduction to logic, introduction to business law. And they were at night, staggered, similar to what law school would be like. And I went to work during the day and I went to school at night. It served two purposes. One, can I do it? The schedule. Two, I got letters of recommendations from the professors, right?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I did over a year period. And I said, okay, this is something that I can handle as far as energy wise. So then I thought, okay, well, now I need to study for the LSAT. It took a year to study for the LSAT. Meanwhile, I'm saving money, right? I'm saving money. Took the LSAT. I was okay, happy with the result. It's kind of funny. When I was younger, right after I finished my chemistry degree, I actually took the LSAT back then. And I got the same exact score, but my score switched where I did really well on the reading this time around, but the games, I just kind of like froze up. But then before, I did really good on the games and worse on the reading. It was just same exact score. So then it took me about a year to put all my package together, my applications together, write my letter of intent. My letter of intent took longer than anything. Just so nervous. Am I going to get rejected? And, all this kind of things that you worry about that now you realize in hindsight, no one even, it's just all in your head.
Yeah, it's not quite as big a deal as you think it is.
Yeah. And when I got accepted, to both Whittier and Western State, but Western State offered me a scholarship to go there. And so I ended up, and not to mention Whittier also did away with their nighttime program.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, okay, well, that's my only choice, you know? And one thing I want to go back to real quick, as far as me deciding I wanted to go to law school. When I first went to law school, I didn't realize that I would be doing what I'm doing today, right? Which is I'm working for the county as an attorney. I had no idea that I'd be a public servant again. I had already been a public servant working for the sanitation district as a chemist. And I was really in love with interacting with the community. I was like, we would give tours all the time, and I was always like raising my hand, I'll do the tour, you know? I've always been kind of passionate about public speaking and just being with the public in general. And I'm not saying that that's what law has to be, because you can do transactional stuff, but I wanted to maximize my earning potential. And I believed that law would allow me to do that. And I also knew that I could stay within the sciences, because you could be an environmental attorney, you could be a patent attorney, and there were some attorneys at my work. So one thing I would like to advise individuals who are thinking about this is I literally spent about a year, if not more, interviewing people at my work that I identified as leaders. And so I would email them, hey, I see that you're, a scientist who went to law school. I'm interested in pursuing that same path. Can I pick your brain about what it was like? And I would email them. They were always very positive and let me come and receptive. And I would go speak with them. I would interview them and kind of help me draw out a blueprint of what it is that I wanted to do, if that makes any sense.
That's great. I wish more people would do that.
Yeah. And so then once I understood that it was a career opportunity that I could take within my own field, again, I remember one of them telling me, look, he went to law school when Seinfeld came out. And he said that he's like, he finished law school and then he started watching Seinfeld. And that helped tune my going back. It's always different when you go back when you're a little bit older, right? You're a little bit more focused. When I was an undergrad, I wanted to go surfing. I wanted to do all these things. And, you don't realize that going to your lab session, and I went, is more important than making sure that you go party that Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I went to law school, once I got accepted, I actually posted a thing on my Facebook that said, this is a count up. This is not a countdown until the day I graduate, right? Because I understood that I'm elevating myself. And anybody who's going, by the way, I think that if you have any kind of inkling that you want to go to law school, that you should, even if you don't finish, even if you realize at the end of it, this is not for me. Because having that answer is worth more than anything. Because I don't believe in living a life of regret. I don't believe in living a life of questioning. I believe in living your life and really seizing every opportunity that may come in front of you. So when I went to law school, I went to it with that mentality, that mindset of I'm not going to say no to any opportunity that comes my way. And so generally speaking, in law school, I did everything other than mock trial, but I interned at the DA's office and they let me do a real trial.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't travel abroad. Those are the only two things in law school that I didn't get to do.
So, okay, you said that it took you quite a while to apply.
Correct.
Did you feel like that extra time it took to apply was maybe going to impact your ability to be successful and hit the ground running when you entered law school?
No, I didn't think of that at all. Because I knew that the funny thing is when I finally applied, the driving force behind me of finally putting all my stuff together is the fact that I had gotten so many people to write me letters of recommendation. I'd gotten so many people. I believe in the put it out there to make it happen versus kind of keeping it secret. And so there were so many people who were giving me positive energy that I eventually applied for them, if that makes any sense, as well as for me, right? And so it was something that I just kind of had to do. My parents, believe it or not, no offense, mom and dad, I love you guys. My parents were not supportive. They couldn't understand it. They're like, look, you're already making you already have a great career as a chemist. You're already making a lot of money. And actually it took me, but it took me quite a bit to get back to making that same kind of money that I was making before. I was already stable. I had a retirement plan. Like I had everything as a chemist, but I wasn't feeling satisfied internally as far as my ultimate goals. I loved being a scientist, and I still am a scientist. It's not like that ended. And I loved the work that I was doing, but I just wanted to do a little bit more, and I wanted to pursue my passion. I didn't want, in reflecting on what it is that I wanted to do when I grew up, that right, like what is it that you want to do in 5 years and 10 years? I understood that no matter how long my life went, I'm always going to sit back and wonder, should I have gone to law school? And I needed to answer that question. And so in waiting the 3 years that I waited, it was just, the best way I can describe it is that I turned a dream into a goal, into a reality. And that process was very systematic, and it was very planned out, and it was good that I followed the plan, right? I postponed my LSAT exam twice because nerves, you get scared. You're like, oh God, maybe if I studied 2 more months, maybe if I studied 1 more, it's just all excuses. It's excuses. So trust in the process, put a timeline for yourself and follow it. A person knows themselves best. Like I said, I was still saving money because I kind of knew that there was going to be a junction where I would have to make a decision. Am I going to continue working? Am I going to focus on school full time? Like, what am I going to do? So my first semester in law school, when I started, it was so incredibly foreign, just because it's different than anything you've ever done. And I know that a lot of people would think, wow, you had a science background. How could you even do it in law school? Like, you're not a political science major, you're not an English major, surrounded by those individuals. But you very quickly realize that the study of law is formulaic, right? There's a formula that's built in, that the way that cases are written is formulaic, the IRAC, right? And the way that the rule statement, when you summarize a case, is following that same method. Like everything has a method to it. Once you crack that method, all of a sudden things click. So I had to make a lot of sacrifices in order for me to go to law school. Having a relationship was very difficult in that first year and a half, because I owned my house. I still had to pay for my mortgage, right? So I often looked for opportunities to rent it out. B, so when I did that, I had to live with my parents. B, I was, now 36, turning 37. So that's strike 2. And then strike 3, you're in school, you don't really have an income, because after a year, I decided to focus full time on school, and I let go of my career, because I was committed. And so having a relationship when you have those 3 strikes is very difficult. And but it's a sacrifice worth making for yourself, right? And I had to make other sacrifices. I didn't hang out with my friends because the time demand of developing skills that are so skill set specific to law school was something that was time consuming. And I just told my friends, look, I may see you in 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I said the same thing.
Exactly. I'm going to have to do this. And then the first year and the second year, right around Thanksgiving, the school will give you a few days off, and then it's finals after, right? 2 weeks of finals. And my brother had just had kids a few years before. So the kids my nieces and nephew were 5 or 6 years old, if that. And they were germ bags. And every year around Thanksgiving, they would get me sick. And as a student, your immune system is compromised, and everyone around you is sick. And now all of a sudden, you're confronted with these 3 adorable, cute bags of germs. And so I would get horribly sick right during finals. So for the last 2 years, because I went to school for 4 years, for the last 2 years, I would not see my family around Thanksgiving. I just wouldn't. I'd be like, look, after finals, I'm going to get at least 2 to 3 weeks off around Christmas and New Year's. I'll hang out with you guys. You can get me sick all you want. and that's when I'll see you. So, yeah, so that was kind of some of the sacrifices that you'd have to make when you're a little bit older, going back to school, because we have things that we didn't have when we were 21 or 22. We have a house. I had a car that I had to make the car payment. So as far as some of the difficulties of going back, um, there's a balancing. There's a balance between, like, I could have maybe gone 1 year sooner, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I also needed to make sure I had all my ducks in a row, right? I had everything that I needed to have. And that information, what did I need to have? It came from the application process. You look at the application process for law school and you identify what are some of the things that I have and what are some of the things that I need. I needed letters of recommendation. I needed to get, my transcripts. Gosh, just all the transcripts of all the schools that I've ever been to, right? Because I was one of those weirdos who this summer I'll take a class at this junior college for fun. Well, now I have to go get that transcript. And I know I'm jumping around in the story, but I can tell you, as far as career-wise, I have to start a new career at 41, right? And that does hurt a little bit, in the sense that you're like, oh God, I could have been retiring in 15 years, had I stayed as a chemist, right? But my job satisfaction today is unparalleled compared to where I was 10 years ago, and that's because I thought about what it is that I wanted to do, understanding that it was a little bit later in age, understanding there was going to be a lot of sacrifice, understanding that the reward is worth it. Like, it's just worth it. So having individuals that you can speak to about your path, such as yourself, is priceless. It's just priceless, because you can have so many doubts washed away. You can have so many questions answered. And the way I would describe it is, if you were to have a GPS and you wanted to have you're like, this is what I want to do. You need 2 points. You need a starting point and you need the end point. And then the GPS can guide you along your path, right? And that's what you are. You
Thank you.
are. Yeah, that's what you do. So, and the only way that you can guide these individuals is by them opening up to you and answering really tough questions, like, can I go to school without working? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like, ideally, if you were to go back, do you feel like you took too many years off? Do you feel like, as far as being able to focus in law school, or feel like you maximize your time? Do you feel like 5 years off would be better, 10 years, 2 years? Is there some ideal you see?
No, it depends on the person, right? And that's because I had let go of even the concept of going to law school since high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, a little bit later, but I never even thought this was something I was going to pursue until I was much older. Had I left undergrad with the understanding that I'm going to go to law school, I think 2 to 3 years is good, right? Maybe 5 years max. So for those individuals who went to undergrad thinking, I'm definitely going to law school, then I think 3 to 5 years is good, because it'll allow you to mature a little bit. Okay. And I really can't stress, I can tell you at Western, most of the individuals who were in the top 10 of the class, we were all older. I'd say more than 7 of us in the top 10 had jobs.
Wow.
And I'm talking about careers, not just jobs. Like our valedictorian was a surgeon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he literally took away every single excuse that anyone could ever have. He's married. He's a surgeon, right? He would always come to school and class with all the cases read, all the reading is done, all the outlining is done, all the homework is done. He'd bring us coffee that he would make. He would bring us treats. He was still a loving husband and made sure that Friday night and Saturday day were devoted to his wife. He was a loving father. I mean, the guy was incredible, right? And watching him made me at least realize this is definitely something that I can do, right? And not only is this something that I could do, this is something that I can excel in, that I'm always going to say yes to every opportunity, right? So going back to answering your question, it depends, right? So I also had peers in my school who were warriors, is the only way I can describe it, because these women were having babies while they were in law school. So here I am, oh gosh, such a rough day. Oh, I need coffee. Oh God, I don't know how I can study. And here she is, 6, 7 months pregnant, can't drink coffee, right?
Yes.
Studying for finals, can't drink coffee, studying for the bar. Okay. So one of my friends had 3 kids while she was in law school, another had a couple. So this is all, these are all things that you have to factor into your consideration. So like a lot of my friends got married. One of my friends in law school, he got married on the first weekend after like the introductory week. And his every Saturday he'd be at the library, Saturday, Sunday. His wife would come and have lunch, and then he would go have dinner. Sometimes he'd come back and study some more. Sometimes he'd stay home after dinner, right? But they made it work. And so say, for instance, you're done with undergrad and you and your significant other decide, you know what, we're going to get married. For his career or her career, we're going to move out of state. We're going to do something or other. And now it's time for you to go to law school, right? So you were establishing his or her career for 3 to 5 years after undergrad. Now it's time for you to go back to law school. That's perfectly reasonable. These are the kinds of things where people need to take into consideration. What is your specific situation, right? Maybe you have to take time off to go take care of a grandfather or grandmother who's, not doing so well, and, family is pulling you away. Maybe you want to go explore China and write a wonderful book about cuisine. Like, it just depends on what it is that you want to do, because law school, unlike any other vocation, doesn't matter what you studied before undergrad. You could be a ballerina, you could be a chemist, you could be an English major, you could be, it doesn't matter, because when you go there, nothing really prepares you for law school. The LSAT sort of prepares you for law school, right? And I can have a wonderful discussion with you about that some other time. But I genuinely think the LSAT and the bar the LSAT reflects what law school is going to be like, and the bar reflects what going to trial is like. You prepare for months and months, then you have 3 days, and then it's in somebody else's hands, the jurors, right? It's out of your hands. And so there's wonderful metaphors for these exams that really do apply to life as an attorney. But I don't think there's an ideal number, but I think so long as the person stays on target, right? Because some of my peers in law school came back to law school when they were in their 60s.
Wow.
Because ultimately the question that you have to ask yourself, and that's the question that I asked myself, and this is true for anything. You want to learn how to ride a bicycle? You want to go to law school? The question that you have to ask yourself is this: I'm going to turn 40. That was the question I asked myself when I was 36. I'm going to turn 40. It's going to happen, right? Unless I get hit by a bus or something. I'm going to turn. So the question is, do I want to be 40 and a JD? Or do I want to be 40 wondering if I should ever go to law school? That's it. That's the question you got to ask yourself, right? And that's the question that every single person who's considering going to law school is 3 years from now, 4 years from now, the time will come. That's what you learn as you get older, right? When you're 20, 21, you don't think that way,
Yeah.
All you're thinking about is the weekend. All you're thinking about is, what are we going to do? When are we going to go to, the beach? So I understood very quickly when I asked myself, would I rather be a person wondering what if, or would I rather be a person who's actualized, right? And again, this is why I said what I said in the beginning. Go to law school, even if you fail, okay? Because you'll answer that question once and for all, for yourself. Because I had a lot of people who started law school with me, and then they said, this is not for me. And then they went and pursued something else, got a PhD in this, a master's in this, just completely changed their entire life and outlook. Phenomenal. What other catalyst can you do that would create such wonderful transformations inside of you, right? Do it.
Yeah.
And so once you understand that you want to go to law school and this is something that you want to do, whatever it is that your purpose may be, 100% pursue that and pursue it with passion and drive, borderlining obsession, in my opinion. Okay, that's just my opinion. That's what I had to do. I had to be obsessive about it in order to be successful about it. For me, I've had other friends who are just brilliant and blessed, who didn't have to work as hard, who still passed the bar on the first try. And they had a much easier time in law school. Maybe they had outlines from people. I don't know. You know what I mean? But the point is that they had a much easier time going about law school in general. But the way I envision what you're describing, people going back to school, people who have an undergraduate degree, right? Because believe it or not, in California, you can go to law school with only a high school degree as long as you're 19. You don't need a bachelor's degree. So I've met some people like that too. But you finish your schooling, you're either getting married or having kids or starting a career that you think you're in love with, and which you very well could be. And life happens, right? 3 years go by, 6 years go by. Oh my God, I just turned 30, right? All my friends are doing this. All my friends are doing that. What am I doing? When I was 28 through 33, I traveled. I just traveled. I spent every other year, I would go wonderful, beautiful places, right? Because I had a wonderful career and I was traveling, in my late 20s, early 30s. And then there will come a point where for me, it was working with young adults and realizing, wow, I'm giving these people mentorship and I'm wondering what it is that I want to do in my life. And going back to law school, the longer it takes, the harder it will be, right? For you to make that decision. That's certainly not impossible, right? And so I think it's okay to take a break, but at the same time, it's perfectly okay to come back later. There's really no limits unless you put them on yourself.
Wow. Okay. I think you are so inspiring, Alex. You are just full of this positive message, and it's something I think a lot of returning students or wannabe returning students really needs to hear. And I definitely agree. I felt more focused after taking 2 years off than I would have been going straight through. I was much more dedicated to the purpose, to myself. And so I 100% agree with what you're saying, that there is a sweet spot between, I think I wish I had taken maybe one more year off. So 3 to 5 years, I think is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's all the questions I had. You had so much information. Is there any last tip you have for anyone that is thinking of returning? I know you've given us so much already.
Yeah. So it's really the main thing, and I know this is not the subject, but when you do go to law school, when you do get accepted, because it will happen, okay? If you apply, you will get accepted somewhere and you will go somewhere. Literally release all the limits you've ever put on yourself and just go full throttle, okay? It was the beginning of my second year. My first semester, all I thought about was don't get kicked out, right? Just don't get kicked out. Second semester, keep the scholarship. Keep the scholarship was my main focus. The beginning of my third semester, I was literally sitting in the cafeteria. I was looking around me and I'm like, wow, I'm surrounded by really intelligent human beings. I don't have to hold back and just go full throttle. Okay, every opportunity that comes your way, take it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
Alex is so inspiring, isn't he? Now, before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you need to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students a lower interest rate than the federal government. And not only with no cost to the student, but oftentimes cash back as well. Visit joinjuno.com/P like podcast/legal learning center for more information. All right, my top takeaways. Night classes at the local college helped Alex to one, get letters of recommendation, and two, get peace of mind that he could actually handle working and going to school at the same time. Two, he conducted several informational interviews. I highly recommend you do this as much as possible. Number three, he recommends you go to law school even if it's just to determine that it's not right for you. If you're going to do that, I highly recommend you save up and try to pay cash for that so you're not followed around by years worth of debt. But Alex believes in living a life of no regrets. Number four, returning later helped him with focus. He recommends about 2 to 5 gap years to help you mature a bit. This is something I definitely agree with. Just keep it in mind. And finally, make a plan and stick to it. Delays are just excuses. Okay, so all the links and notes and so forth will be in the show notes. A full transcript will be available as well. But that's it for this episode. Be sure to check in next week for part 2 of this series of non-traditional students, where we will talk to Tina, who was a mom while she was in law school. And if you learned something today, please like, share, comment, subscribe, so that this show is more visible to others and can help those who need it. Thanks.